Welcome to The Work in Between, the podcast where we explore topics and daily habits that help us reach our health-related goals. I'm your host, Gretchen Holmes. My guest today is Dr. Wendi Zimmer, PhD. She is the owner of Learning Engaged and an expert in mindset development. Wendi believes we absolutely have the ability to shift our mindset to transform our lives and has helped thousands of people do just that with her message, "Your mindset gives you power." Wendi is also a clinical assistant professor at Texas A&M. She has a new book coming out, The Force Continuum, How to Shift Your Mindset to Transform Your Life. And I know that we're going to talk about that, but I want to welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on the show, Wendi.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. I'm excited to join you today and have a fun conversation with your audience. It's going to be great.
I agree. This topic is very much about doing the inside work, which is what this podcast is all about. I like how you acknowledge that one of the biggest challenges, which I struggled with, and I know so many of us struggle with, which is what exactly it is that you're supposed to do to change your mindset. It's incredibly ambiguous. And I know that we're going to get into that, and I'm really excited about that. So let's get into some of the basics here. How do you even define mindset? What is it that we're even talking about?
That's a fantastic question, because I agree with you, Gretchen. I think we've started to have so many conversations around mindset and around, what are we supposed to be doing? And we don't stop and pause for a second to even think about, what are we talking about, right? What exactly are we looking at? And many people define mindset differently. For me, it's the attitudes and the actions that you take to really transform your life, to put yourself in a position where you believe in yourself and you speak to yourself and you essentially give yourself the power to be the person that you want to be. Because our mindset really determines how we show up for ourselves. It shows up in the way we speak to ourselves, the way we speak to one another, the way that we, like I said, believe in ourselves. And so often that is this massive, daunting, ambiguous term that we don't know what to do with. And so I think simplifying it down to our attitudes and our actions around how we show up is a way to start the conversation leaning toward how to actually change our mindsets.
I like that. I don't think a lot of people realize, because how we think about ourselves isn't as obvious sometimes as what we say to other people or what people say to us. But I almost think we don't even recognize what we're saying to ourselves sometimes, which makes this all the more difficult. Because I think a lot of us think we're not saying anything negative about ourselves. And then in the next breath, we're telling ourselves how stupid we are, or how you can't do that, or that's ridiculous. And because they're so ingrained, I don't think we pay as much attention to them as we probably should. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think also there's the accountability piece, because if I say unkind things to others, then I might be judged, or people will notice, or they'll look at me like, why would you say that? That's so unkind. But there's nobody holding us accountable for how we talk to ourselves. And our brains are so malleable that essentially what our inputs equal our outputs. So the more negative that we talk to ourselves, the more negative we think about ourselves. And we just essentially go in this massive downward spiral that we don't even realize we're doing, because it becomes so common. It becomes so common for us to put ourselves down. But to your point, we don't even realize we're doing it a lot of times, because it's just our norm. It's our norm to say, oh, I have a bad memory, or, oh, I can't believe I did that. That was so stupid. Or, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough, whatever those pieces look like. And there's nobody inside our head to make us stop.
It's really important. Sometimes if we slip up and say it out loud, people around us may call us out on it. But when we don't say it out loud and we just think it, you're right. There is nobody but ourselves. So I can't wait to find out how we can address that. One question I did have is how you define or what does it look like, a healthy mindset versus a destructive mindset? What are the differences?
That's a very good question. And I think we often, if you look at research by like Carol Dweck, who's the mindset expert, and she talks a lot about growth versus fixed mindset. And even she says her research has been taken a little bit in the wrong direction by people because we try to make it so black or white, right? You're either one or the other. You either have a growth mindset or you have a fixed mindset, and what exactly that's supposed to look like. And so I think in times, and this is something that when I work with my students and I work with my clients, I talk to them about of, thinking about a healthy mindset largely varies based upon where you are and what you need. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a place where you are just starting out and you have for years not believed in yourself and told yourself negative thoughts and not showed up for yourself, then a healthy mindset is anything that you do that starts pushing you positive, right? Like we have these unrealistic expectations that change is going to be fast because now I know I need to have a good mindset, right? So I'm just going to flip that switch and it's going to be amazing how I start thinking good about myself and I start believing in myself. And that change is never that fast. Let's be honest. We know that change is never that fast. But the problem lies in we think it has to be either or. We think, well, if all of a sudden I have a negative thought about myself or all of a sudden I don't believe in myself, well, then obviously I'm back on that unhealthy side, right? There's something wrong with me. Where in all actuality, that's the thing about mindset. It's never done. You're always working on your mindset. You're always trying to figure out what exactly do I need? Where should I be in this moment? What kind of support should I get? And it's a constant piece. And so if you're taking small steps every day, I believe that's a healthy mindset because you're aware that your mindset is not exactly where you need it to be to accomplish what you need. And you're working towards it. Where if you're not even aware or you think it's hopeless, that's where that destructive, unhealthy mindset comes in. And that was where my problem always is because I thought, well, I'm working on it. I'm getting a little bit better, but I still have moments where I don't feel good about myself. I still have moments where I don't believe in myself. I still have moments where I worry about people judging me, or I worry about how am I going to look? What is this going to look like to everybody else? And so I thought my mindset was much worse than it actually was because I made the assumption that, again, it's either black or white, right? It's either I have a great mindset or I don't, where in all actuality, that is not the case. And what I've learned is, again, those small steps. If you're taking small steps, then you are working toward a healthy mindset. And your mindset is probably better than you even realize it is because you're aware that it's something you need to be working on.
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. We do tend to see things very black and white, and which puts us in a really bad spot because we will always look at ourselves practically as failures if we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to grow. I think that we also, many of us, as we were becoming adults, didn't realize how malleable our brains even are. I mean, because I've heard people say, look, I am who I am. I'm never going to change.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I am who I am, but I have changed a lot over my lifetime. I hope I always change over my lifetime, but I've become more and more aware. So I know which things I want to intentionally change, but we become aware of things over time. It's not like all of a sudden when we hit 21, now everything we're supposed to be aware of is presented to us. Some figure things out until we're 60. So, I mean, it is a process. And I think that that's a really important, I think it's an important point to make. One thing.
Also,
go ahead. No, please go ahead.
No, and how wonderful, right? How wonderful to think that we don't need to have it all figured out right now. My life didn't stop, right? I'm not at a place where it's like, well, I'm never going to get any better. I'm never going to change. I'm never going to be stronger than I am now. Like, I think we fall into that I used to live my best life, or I used to think I would be here at a certain point and I didn't reach that point that I thought I would be at right now. And so then that must be it, right? The best days of my life are over. And that is not the case. So it literally, so much of this is shifting our perspective on what we want our lives to look like and what we want the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, because we can change and we can develop and we can what we want. It's just a matter of figuring out how. And that's a key piece to this conversation.
Yeah, a big part of this, and I'm sure that you get into this a lot, is, what our self-limiting beliefs are. One of my big ones was, I'm too old. It's too late for me to start making these changes. I'm in my late 50s. I'm in my early 60s. It's too late for me to figure these. It's too late for me to do anything different. But that's not true.
No.
Age has nothing to do with it, but these self-limiting beliefs are incredibly powerful. And until we are able to articulate what those are, it's really difficult to work on them.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So what are some of the actionable strategies that we can do to, I don't know, become aware of our mindsets and what's going on up there, and then making some steps to shift to a more positive, more healthy mindset?
That's a great question, Gretchen. Because to be honest, so this process of figuring out my own mindset journey, right, came from years of frustration and finding myself in situations where I thought I had a strong mindset. I thought I had a positive mindset. I thought that because I've always been a relatively upbeat, happy person. I'm not saying that things won't happen in my life. I've had plenty of things happen in my life, but I've always felt like, oh, I'm pretty positive, right? I can see the good in people. I can see the good in situations. And then when negative situations, when devastating situations happen to me, all of a sudden I couldn't. And, when things became really struggling, really challenging, that's when I was tested and I did not do very well. And so I started, luckily, I've now become a researcher by trade, which if you'd have told me 20 years ago, that would have been my path. I would have told you were wrong, but I love it. And so through my research, that's what I really dug into, because the world always tells us that we need to believe in ourselves, that you need to have a good mindset, right? But very often, does anyone tell us how? And so my research over the last many years has been figuring out what is the how. Because I knew in my own life, I'm very busy. I have a young child. I have a family. I'm not going to be able to just massively shift and go, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to now implement all of these new things and it's going to massively change my life. And I don't want to either, nor do I know many people who do, right? Like, let's be real. And so I started doing research on small things we can do to shift our mindset. Because again, if it's not these small steps, it's not sustainable. One of my all-time favorites is what I call have to get to. And it's thinking about just shifting one little word. And so getting in a habit of, instead of saying, I have to go pick up my daughter from school, I have to go, get up early tomorrow, I have to this, shifting to I get to. Because when you think of it like, oh, I get to go pick up my daughter from school, what a blessing. What a blessing that I have a job where I can leave and go pick her up. What a blessing that I have a daughter that I love dearly, right? Or, I have to wake up early tomorrow. I get to wake up early tomorrow. That means a couple of things. One, today I woke up later. Yeah. How amazing that I don't have to get up crazy early every morning. Or saying that I get to wake up early tomorrow can mean maybe I have something great I'm looking forward to. Maybe I'm in a situation where I have a nice warm bed to sleep in. I have a situation where, you think of the things in life that we start to take for granted. And by constantly saying, I have to, we're training our minds to see things as a burden that aren't necessarily a burden, because there are things in my life I have to do that I don't want to do, but many of them are not. And so that is one strategy that I use all the time. And I find it so simple. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes because it becomes a habit, right? And so that's one strategy that I love that I think is very simple. Another one to shift my mindset and shift my perspective is I've started working myself and teaching others to just pause for a second. Just pause for a second and give yourself time to reflect on where you are and what's going on. And I'm not saying toxic positivity because I do not believe in toxic positivity. I think it is a horrible thing that we've tried to start shifting of like, oh, you should find good in everything that's happening to you. I mean, maybe at some point later in the future, you might be able to look back on a devastating situation and see good that came out of it. But having to try to find good in the moment when there's not really good, like that's not what's going to be sustainable for you. That's not what's going to have long-term impact, because it's just going to make you to falsify or have this fake positivity. But if you can actually look around and go, okay, what are the blessings that I have in my life? What are the good things that I have in my life when you're in really difficult situations? Because it may just be like, you know what? I have people around me who love me. There's not a lot else good that's going on right now, but I know when I go home tonight, I have someone who is going to notice if I don't show up. Or at least my job is not fantastic and my job is difficult, but I can see, I have a job, which would be very difficult if I didn't. And my job is fabulous, by the way. So that's not an example for me, but so there's those kinds of things of, I'm not saying just be grateful because you woke up every morning. I do think that's something to be grateful for, but I think so often we throw around things like, well, at least I woke up this morning. Well, at least, I have my health, and that's important, but really finding things that matter to you. And again, taking a moment to pause. And maybe that means I love sometimes just putting my hand on my heart and like taking a deep breath and going, okay, like what is really happening? What's going on around me? What are the things that I can draw positive energy from, as opposed to just going after one thing, after one thing, after the next thing, after the next thing, and realizing you get to the end of the day and you just essentially existed and never stopped to reflect on the more positive things. And again, it may not be the best thing in the world, but the more positive things that were happening in your life instead of just going through the motions, because our culture trains us to do that. Our culture trains us to just push through, right? Just go minute by minute by minute by minute. And then we get to the end of the day and we sit down on the couch and we are exhausted because we didn't even take a second to pause during the day because we feel guilty. As women, we are very, very prone to feeling guilty if we stop for a second and sit down. And so just, again, getting into that habit, training ourselves to stop for a second and be in the moment and try to find something that's good that's happening around you instead of just pushing through all the struggles and all the challenges and not giving yourself that moment to breathe.
I can see where that's very powerful for a couple of reasons. But one also is if you're in this downward spiral, stopping and taking a pause, putting your hand on your heart, taking deep breaths, getting up and walking outside for a minute, also can stop those negative tapes in our heads. It can stop us from continuing to go even deeper into that negative space. And so I do that. Sometimes I just get up and I go outside. We have a lovely courtyard at work and I just sit on the bench just for a minute and I just breathe. And it helps recenter me a little bit. The other thing that I like, of course, is the reframing of I have to I get to. That was so critical in my success when I made the decision that I needed to get healthier, because I switched it from I have to, I'm punishing myself, oh my Lord, I have to eat more salad, I have to eat all this, to I am so lucky that I have the opportunity to eat this healthy food. And I came at it from such a perspective of gratitude that it truly made a difference in my embracing my new lifestyle and being curious about how I can keep making it better from feeling punished and angry and all those other emotions. And so even that simple framing of I get to, really, I don't know how you say that and not feel gratitude and feel happier, because you're right. I get to go to work. I get to even do laundry. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't get to do laundry, or they have to, go borrow their somebody's laundry washer and dryer, or they don't have enough money to go to the laundromat. I get to just walk in my back room and do my laundry. And so I agree with you, though. I think the whole toxic positivity is inauthentic, and I think it forces us to put on a fake smile, and it takes away from what we're supposed to be doing, which is intentionally living our lives. And sometimes bad things happen, and we need to be present for those too, because if we pretend those things aren't happening, then we aren't dealing with any of it, and that isn't healthy either. So I really like what you said. We change have to get to, and then take a pause. What's another one?
I think another good one is to, again, because so often we go day by day, moment by moment, and we just exist, is thinking about ways and those times where we don't have the energy ourselves, or we don't have the belief ourselves, finding something else that we can channel that energy, channel that belief, even if it's borrowing it from someone else. I teach people often, find somebody that inspires you, find somebody that when you look at their life, or when you look at the way they go day to day, and who knows what's actually happening on their inside. They may be struggling as much as you are, but it doesn't matter for this exercise. Like, find someone that you think, I want to be walking around smiling more. That person's walking around smiling more. I can pull from their energy. I can pull from their belief. For me, it's always my daughter. My daughter is about to turn 10 years old. She has this contagious energy. She loves life. She wants to be around people. She is just happy to exist, literally. And so when I have moments where I'm like, I don't have the energy to do this, I pull from her. And then I also think, okay, at the end of the day, I'm also doing most of what I'm doing for her. I want her to see a strong, independent woman. I want her to see what it looks like for her mom to go after her dreams, for her mom to overcome challenges, for her mom to have days where it's like, I'm not having a great day, but I'm going to find ways to see what's good, or I'm going to not let today get me down. I'm going to be a stronger person tomorrow. And so when I don't have the strength and the energy myself, I picture her in my head if she's not around me. And then that gives me strength, that gives me belief, that gives me energy when I can't find it myself. And so I think pulling that from others and looking, I mean, it's kind of like a role model, but honestly, it's so much more than that, because obviously my daughter's not my role model. Well, in some ways she very much is. But as far as like my academic career or my consulting career, that is not where she's living her life. But when you can pull from somebody and you can think, this is why I'm doing this, or this is how I'm going to borrow their energy or borrow their actions, then you almost take on this different persona, because it's not you for it. You're like borrowing, you're pursuing that energy from someone else.
Yeah, kids are so wonderful at being in this world with so much wonder and excitement, and everything is fresh and new and cool and funny, and they just sparkle. And I know people who do that too. My mom was like that, and so if I was having a day where my mind was tanking, if I called my mom, within seconds I was feeling better, and she would make me laugh. And you're right. It's so incredibly contagious. I think that we have to give ourselves permission to get out of our own heads and go seek the joy and the wonder and the excitement that others might be having. Not that they have it all the time, but we don't have it all the time either. And that's why I think it's so incredibly, critically important for us to tell our stories, because that's how we connect. That's learn about how people kind of get in and out of these things and what strategies work. And that I have been so inspired by other people's journeys and their stories. And I, of course, I tell mine on here all the time, and a new book, The Work in Between. And I just think that's so important to gather whatever strength and enthusiasm and joy wherever we get it. But we sometimes have to intentionally go get it.
We do. And it's because it's not going to happen by accident. None of these things, like if I didn't have to work on my mindset, if I didn't have to incorporate these little strategies, these little steps into my daily life, then I wouldn't be where I am. Now, I am so much better now than when I started this research years ago, but it's taken all those little steps along the way.
Yeah.
If I had just sat here and never made any steps toward improving my mindset, never took any action, I would be no different than I was years ago, right? About 5 years ago is when I really started on this journey, because no one's going to do it for me. We have to work on ourselves. We have to work on, again, our inputs, the things inside of our head, the way that we speak and talk and think, because if not, our outputs are never going to get better. We have to work on ourselves first, and then we can do the things that we want to do every day. But it really does start with us. And that's what makes mindset development so difficult, because it's so much easier to help others. It's so much easier to look at other people and go, oh, if you only this, or I can help you do this, or whatever that piece is. But it's much more difficult to work on ourselves. And so that's why a lot of times I feel, in my experience, where people stumble is because it's easier to pretend like it's not happening to us, or we are so used to helping others and not helping ourselves that it's very difficult to give the time and energy to work on ourselves. We just don't naturally do that.
No. And we have to give ourselves permission. We have to accept the fact, which may be a whole nother layer of work, that we are worth that kind of effort, and we deserve to put time and effort into our own sense of self in order to live whatever dreams we want to pursue. I think that's a big part of it as well. I want to definitely talk about your new book. Congratulations. I know how this feels. It is the coolest thing ever, even though both of us have published, certainly in our careers as researchers. There is something totally different about putting a book out there. But talk to us about the Force Continuum.
Thank you. Yes. And congratulations on your new book, Gretchen. I started reading it. It is phenomenal. Oh. And I do agree with you. There's just something different about getting a book into people's hands that you hope will change their lives based upon what we've learned, right? What we've learned and what we've been through. If we can save people a little of the struggles and challenges we've been through by what we've learned, then what a great gift, right?
Yeah.
So my book is essentially, I joke that it's a choose your own adventure book. Because again, if you're a child of I guess they started in the late 80s, early 90s, choose your own adventure books. But because I knew when I started out, again, this premise behind mindset, we don't have time to massively shift our lives. And so often with the time we're in, personal development is huge. And I love personal development. I listen to podcasts all the time. I read books all the time. I listen to webinars all the time. So I love that there's been such a huge push on personal development, because I completely agree with you, Gretchen. We have to give ourselves permission to invest in ourselves, and then the grace to realize that it's not going to be an easy path in some way. Some days it'll be very easy. Other days it will be incredibly challenging. And so my book is set up with a premise. There's actually an assessment that starts for section 2 of the book that walks you through what are the parts of your mindset? What are the parts of believing in yourself that you really need to grow and develop the most? While I hope everybody picks up the book and starts on page 1 and reads all the way through, I also recognize that we're busy and there's a lot of things going on. And so I have looked at this, and what my research shows is that our force, that aspect of believing in yourself, is actually composed of 4 things. A big piece being mindset, because if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to believe in yourself. The second piece is identity, how you want to be seen, how you want other people to see you. The third piece is habits. So the habits that you have in your life that you already have that are serving you well, and then habits that you need to get rid of, but then also habits that you need to develop, again, to increase the belief you have in yourself. And then that fourth component is energy. So how are you getting energy? And then how are you giving out energy? And what my research has found, and then through my own life and then working with others, is when you work on all 4 of those components in different ways, that's what really equates to believing in yourself. Because you get out of your own head. And I love that you said that, Gretchen. I use that all the time with people. We have to get out of our own heads, get out of our own way, and start with mindset. But it can't just stop with mindset, because it also takes time for us to stop and reflect of, like, who do I really want to be? What does this actually look like for me? Believing in myself, being the person that I want to be. What does that actually look like? Because we don't often take the time to give ourselves permission to think about, who do I want to be? We get in this rut. I've always been the same person, right? I find my identity in my career. I find my identity in my role in my family. I find my identity in whatever those pieces look like. And there's nothing wrong with that. But is that the only thing you want? Is there something else you want? What do you want that to look like? And then again, developing habits around it. Because habits are literally, like, the research behind habits is phenomenal. And when you create different habits in your life, it makes things automatic. And so that working on your mindset every day, if you have habits around that, it's less taxing. And that's where the key is finding a way to make it simpler so it becomes a habit for you to believe in yourself, as opposed to defaulting to all the negative things that we think and believe about ourselves. And then again, that energy piece, because if you don't stop and think about, how am I getting my energy? Like, I'm an incredibly introverted person. If I'm not careful, I will allow my energy to be sucked dry, especially in the role that I have. I love people. It's not that I don't love people. I teach for a living, but on days where I teach multiple classes, I need a hot minute to just, like, nothing, to sit in my office and refuel or recharge, or whatever word you want to use, because people drain my energy as much as I love them. And so giving ourselves permission and grace to think about, where does my energy come from? Where do I spend my energy? Where do I want to spend my energy? And so the book has, for each of those 4 pillars, I have simple, easy to implement strategies that walk you through the how to develop your mindset the way you want, how to develop your identity the way you want, your habits and your energy. And again, little things where I hope that book becomes a resource. There's a lot of places in that you can write all in it, because that's how I read. So I developed the book where people can write all in it as well. But that it's a resource they put on their shelves, that it's like, okay, I tried a strategy or 2. Maybe they worked, maybe they didn't. We're all very different. So there's never going to be a formula for, this is how you believe in yourself, which is why it's so complicated. So little strategies for people to try. And then if they work, great. If they work and you modify them, great. If they don't work, you go back to the book and you're like, okay, I didn't like this one because of this. Let me try this next one because it may better fit my situation and my circumstances. And so that is the way the book is designed to be used. And I can't wait for it to get out on shelves, and because it's going to hopefully get in a bunch of people's hands and really impact some lives the way that the process has impacted mine.
Well, when is it going to be available? When's the published date?
Thank you. So the published date is January 10th. So we still have a few months, but it is right on track, and I'm excited for that day. It's going to be a great day.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. And it does sound like it's going to be an incredibly valuable tool for everyone. And so I would encourage folks to remember to put this down. And I just blanked on the name of your book, The Force Continuum, and by Wendi Zimmer, and make sure that it sounds to me like it'd be a great Christmas gift, or a great gift to yourself when you, if you're contemplating making this journey. This sounds like a great place to start.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Wendi. I always find my guests to be so incredibly inspiring, and I have a feeling that you'll be back because we have a lot to talk about, I think, but I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you, Gretchen. No, I would love to come back and talk more with you, and you are a joy, and I know your audience enjoys listening to your podcast, and so thank you for doing this. It's not an easy task.
You're welcome. I probably get more out of it than anybody, but I am having a ball, I have to say. Good. I want to remind folks to let me know what you want to hear on the show. If you go to my website, GretchenHolmesPhD.com, you can recommend topics. You can let me know how you're doing. You can also get all sorts of great information there, previous podcasts. You can send a link. There's a link there if you want to just send me a note to say hi. I'd love to hear from you. So please check it out. And also a quick reminder that you can find my new best-selling book, The Work in Between, wherever you buy your books online, or you can find a direct link on my website as well. Finally, from me to you, remember to love and celebrate yourself now, today. Don't wait until you feel worthy. You already are. Loving yourself is the only way to good health. A quick reminder, the information on this podcast is not intended nor implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Until next time, take care.